speaking out against what they describe as Houston Police Department's collaboration with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celestia Sherman. We'll also dive into one of the most powerful and often misunderstood institutions in American government, the Supreme Court. We'll discuss with Seth Chandler, professor of law at the University of Houston Law Center.
And I'm Frank Billingsley, plus Houston actress Susan Koozin, currently playing Miss Marple in The Mirror Cracked on stage at the Alley Theater, will stop by to tell us more about that production.
And as Ernie, Frank, and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, questions, and concerns. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. President Trump has announced an extended 90-day tariff negotiating period with Mexico, with a 25% tariff rate in place in the interim. This after a phone conversation with Mexico's president. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is in Israel to try to restart the Gaza ceasefire talks amid a deepening food supply crisis there. Jordanian officials today say they were able to move 35 aid trucks into northern Gaza. Another 30 trucks were delayed by Israeli restrictions. Health officials in Gaza say dozens of Palestinians were killed yesterday, and several were wounded as they awaited a food delivery on the Gaza Strip. NPR's Emily Feng has more.
Starting Monday, Israel has been pausing fighting for about 10 hours a day to let in more food trucks. But in reality, we've been reporting that very little food is actually making it to people who need it. Aid organizations say Israel has not permitted them to bring in the volume of food and aid that they would like to see, and that scarcity means people are still desperate, and they and gangs are looting these trucks.
NPR's Emily Feng. Some pro-Trump podcasters say they are growing frustrated at the president's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. NPR's Elena Moore reports.
Joe Rogan hosts the #1 podcast in the country, according to the audience tracking firm Edison. Last fall, he endorsed Trump after having him on the show. But in recent episodes, he's been critical of Trump over Epstein, arguing officials didn't keep their word to make more information public.
People are cynical because you had all this hope for change, and then you realize, the same people that are pulling the strings are still pulling the strings.
Rogan is one of several podcasters angry about this, which may be notable, given these shows have an audience that politicians want to reach. According to Edison, the vast majority of listeners are young men who don't overwhelmingly align with a major political party. Elena Moore, NPR News.
NASA and SpaceX are preparing to launch a crew of 4 to the International Space Station from Florida's Kennedy Space Center. Central Florida Public Media's Brendan Byrne has details.
SpaceX's Dragon capsule will carry 2 U.S. astronauts, one from Japan and a Russian cosmonaut. After launching, it will take about a day and a half to make it to the station. Once there, the crew will spend about 6 months living and working aboard the orbiting lab. The mission's pilot, Mike Fink, will mark his 4th trip to space, launching previously on NASA's Space Shuttle and Russia's Soyuz capsule. It will be the first space flight for Commander Zena Cardman. She was set to launch to the station last year, but was bumped from that mission to make room for NASA's Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. The agency determined their ride to space, Boeing's Starliner capsule, was unsafe to return them. Instead, they returned to Earth in SpaceX's capsule. For NPR News, I'm Brendan Byrne in Orlando.
The NASDAQ is up 202 points. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. New solid waste trucks are on the way to Houston from New Mexico. City Council approved the $12.5 million purchase Wednesday. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh reports the move comes as complaints about missed solid waste pickup are surging.
Mayor John Whitmire argues the solid waste department inherited a mess, including inefficient department policies, an aging fleet of trucks, and long wait times at the single recycling drop-off facility in the city. He says the new department director, Larius Hassan, and the 31 additional trucks will alleviate the problems.
This director is moving and shaking, and you're going to see immediate results.
Complaints to 311 about missed recycling are soaring, nearly 15,000 over the past 12 weeks, compared to about 4,000 during the same time in 2024. Missed garbage complaints over the same periods held steady at more than 9,500. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
The Texas Senate is on the verge of once again passing a bill that would largely ban hemp-based THC products. Senate Bill 5 advanced to a full floor vote, which could take place in the next few days. Lubbock Republican Charles Perry says the job losses from the ban are not as severe as opponents claim.
The estimates dropped substantially that maybe 5,000 people could be without work, but that would be up to the individual business owner to leave the state or quit doing business because they were 100% dependent on an illegal product.
Governor Greg Abbott vetoed a similar bill during the regular session. And the National Weather Service says its radio transmitter in Galveston will be back online next month. It'll be a temporary replacement for the one that's been out of commission since a fire damaged it in March. The transmitter broadcasts weather-related warnings and alerts for the public 24/7. The temporary transmitter will not have as big of a range as the original one. However, it will be online August 31st. Right now, it's 83 degrees here on the UH campus. High today around 98. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Houston.
Good morning. There's a lot to cover today, but what I really love about today's show
is that you're here?
Well, I'm here. We're all here.
You're vertical.
That I'm vertical. Boy, it's like this is like a Mad Lib on this show. I'll just leave a blank. They'll fill it in. It's that there's a lot we're going to learn today.
Yes.
It seems like a really good enlightening show.
Yeah.
And that's what I look forward to. I love to learn about things.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that there are a lot of really important things that we are seeing in the news, and specifically, like coming up, we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court and having a better understanding of that. And that's the thing, right? Is we hear about all of these decisions being made,
and we never really thought much about them until June when they would make all these decisions at once. But
right? Now it's a consistent process that's happening that we're seeing, and we need to understand. Where are we here? Are we okay?
My problem in it, and we'll talk about this with our expert in a little bit, is the fact that the headlines, the news media grabs the salacious part of the story, the exciting part of the story, and says there was a ruling on that.
Right.
But that's not really what the Supreme Court does. And that's what we want to dig into. What exactly are they deciding? How does it impact our lives? What does it mean to us? And what do these dissensions and agreements and all of that mean in the separation of that?
Sometimes not to decide is a decision.
Right.
Right. And I also think that when we're speaking about this specifically, when we're looking at it, how these decisions, how are they really affecting the policy? I think for me, that's the big thing that I want to sit down with our guests and understand is like when we look at these decisions, are these major impacts or are these, we're going to be okay?
Yeah. On my old series, Interviews, I got to sit down with Sonia Sotomayor. And it was fascinating to talk with her about how decisions are made and what they do and the understanding of it. And it's we'll get into all of that in a little bit. We're also going to take a look at redistricting maps, and we have the Republican point of view on it so we can understand both sides of the issue. We want to make sure that we're fair on that always. And of course, our current obsessions are coming up. And I'm worried my current obsession is the Supreme Court today.
Same. I think a lot of it is there's a lot on our minds right now during this time where we're looking to, for me at least, I look on my social media and there's just so many very serious things happening in this world right now that it's kind of hard to have like an easy, fun, little frivolous, like my obsession is gardening.
Although.
Okay. Tell me, although.
Guess what? You'll be proud of me. Guess what Kevin and I did yesterday? We went to see Superman.
What do you think? Okay, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it during.
Okay, I loved it. We'll talk about it
in our obsession.
I'm now obsessed with it.
But
coming up later in the show, though, I want to let you all know we'll be sharing our obsessions. We want to hear your obsessions. You can start sending them in right now. You can start texting them to us at 713-440-8870. You can also email them to us, talk@hellohouston.org. And later in the show, we'll go through all your current obsessions, too. These are the things that are exciting you beyond excitement. So that's coming up in the show. Frank, yesterday we kind of skipped over a lot of weather. So what's the weekend?
Hot
was there
Moses
weather?
Yesterday.
It was so
It was
hot.
like 99. The air was really kind of dry, and so the morning felt pretty good because the air was dry. But that dry air is easy to heat, easy to cool down, but easy to heat. And let me tell you, yesterday was hot.
It was hot.
It's going to be a little more hot and humid today. Looking for 97, but 97, 98, right on into the weekend. Chances of rain go up by Saturday.
Okay.
Just because of some moisture trying to come in off the Gulf. There's honestly still really quiet out there in the tropics for our area. So
okay, but you hinted at getting kind of rainy Saturday. What's Saturday, Sunday look like? Did you say?
Yes, I would say not a washout, but showery, like we've seen all summer.
It was overcast.
You see a shower, yeah.
It was overcast this morning.
Yeah, and that helps.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it overcast.
Same.
So,
well, I grew up in a place called Binghamton, New York, which in the day, I don't know if it's really still true, second least amount of sun of any city in the United States.
That's probably true. Yeah. And I went to school in Virginia, which I loved because it got all 4 seasons. But let me tell you, during the wintertime, it was like gray after gray after gray. You never saw the sun for months.
But see, I feel my best in a gray, windy day because that's what I grew up in.
Look what you're wearing.
Well, it's
if you're
cold
watching
in our
us on
studios.
YouTube, the gray man is here today.
I always am running around in a black T-shirt and jeans usually around here. And every time it's showtime, I grab one of my little coats from my office and put them on, my little flannels and stuff. So I always look out of season in here. But trust me, we keep it chilly here so we can keep Frank fresh. So we have to keep it cool so he doesn't spoil.
Okay, and you do not drive a Ford F-150 in case people are wondering.
Okay, so moving along, like we said, there are a lot of things we are going to be covering today. You can join that conversation by sending us a text or giving us a call at 713-440-8870. And moving right into today's headlines. At a Houston City Council public comment session held on Tuesday, more than 40 people signed up to speak about what they described as the Houston Police Department collaboration with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE. Rob Block, a member of Houston Leads, the coalition of groups that organized the turnout, told Houston Public Media that community members are very scared when they see any type of law enforcement activity and assume that ICE is involved. The protest came after the Houston Chronicle reported HPD called ICE on at least 58 people from January through the end of May, mostly during traffic stops, but also after people called 911 for help. In at least one instance, the paper reported HPD called ICE on a woman after she called 911 to report domestic abuse. A spokesperson for Mayor John Whitmire told Houston Public Media that the mayor has consistently stated that the city of Houston is not ICE and does not focus on immigration enforcement. What are your thoughts on the allegations of the Houston Police Department working with ICE, or are people just doing their job? Give us a call. Now is the time. It's 713-440-8870.
That's a good question because I know a few policemen. I don't think they signed up to be part of ICE enforcement. Mm-hmm. I mean, but is it their job? And if you read the article on Houston Public Media's website, the mayor's office said, ask the police about this. And the police said, ask the mayor's office about this. Yeah. Nobody wants this is a hot potato.
Yeah. And, this is the thing, right? We have police to maintain public order. They enforce the laws, and they're supposed to protect us and our property. So they're obviously, police, no doubt, are a crucial component within, our functioning society. And they're supposed to uphold the rule of law. but I'm not sure they need to be policing people's immigration status. If you want to police someone's immigration status, you can become a Border Patrol agent. We have a complete agency that does exactly that. And for me, I feel like this is an overreach. People should feel safe in whatever country they are in, without having to be legal or not. To me, it is, as a police officer, you are supposed to protect people.
I agree with you. And don't forget, there's a trust factor that people have when they see a policeman or a policewoman in uniform. They count on what you just said. That's the person to protect them. Mm-hmm. They don't feel, I don't think that they should have to see a policeman and think, oh my gosh, they may grab me.
I'm scared.
They may grab me for no good reason.
Right.
And detain me for no good reason.
But I think, Frank, that's where the rub comes in all of this. And I'm not saying I agree with either side in this juncture while we're talking here. But when you say for no good reason, and I think the belief in one segment is they are here undocumented. We use the term, we toss it around, illegal. Therefore, there is already a crime being committed, and we are not supposed to be a sanctuary city. Those shouldn't exist anymore. So if you uncover this information as a police officer in the line of your work, not saying the police are going out and searching for people, but if you find out when you have someone for a traffic stop and they can't produce papers and it turns out that they are undocumented, then therefore that's why the police should be involved.
But to clarify, Tony Payan of Rice University specifically clarified that the word criminal is being used here in the incorrect context. Right. That, yes, there could be essentially a law being broken when it comes to immigration law, but that doesn't necessarily make you a criminal. Just the way if you are driving and you run a red light, you are breaking traffic laws, or you're speeding, you're breaking traffic laws. That doesn't necessarily make you a criminal.
If you are a criminal, you're a criminal. What I mean by no good reason is someone who goes for their immigration status hearing, and then they are pulled aside for no good reason.
Or the example that the Houston Chronicle gave was a woman who called 911 who was in a domestic abuse situation, and the police arrived and allegedly called ICE and escalated the situation. To me, I think anybody, if they are in danger, should feel, regardless of your status in this country, what makes this country great is that there is a trust in our law enforcement, in our police.
Speak on the opposite side of this also to say if they should come to your house, if the police come to your house because of, and let's just make this up, but a domestic situation, and so they're called in, and they should see obvious signs of tax fraud. Do they call the IRS to come in? No. They deal with the situation they came for, even if they see implications of something that may not be right with policy or law in the country. So there's where I have the difference. It's like, okay, they weren't called in for a status situation. They were called in because of a violence situation, and they should take care of that. So it's like I see both sides of this in the arguments. Do I agree with both sides of this? No. Well, but I do see the arguments.
Well, of course. I mean, I think we can all see both sides to it. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at this from a situation, and again, we want to hear from you. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
And don't forget, if ICE is not getting local support from the police, then that gives them a reason to call in the National Guard, which is what happened in Los Angeles.
Good point.
And we don't want that. So if they have the authority to call on HPD to help them do their job, then they have that authority. The problem is we can't seem to get a straight answer out of the mayor's office or out of HPD. Nobody wants to say, yes, this is what we're doing. And when you see a policeman, you're also looking at an ICE officer, right?
So speaking of calling, we have some calls coming in at 713-440-8870. Manny from Ireland, what's on your mind?
Hi, good morning, guys. Just a comment as a migrant myself. I don't agree with HPD cooperating with ICE, but I would carve out just one exception, and that is if they find out that the person that is in front of them has a long criminal record. And I think that is general public is aligned with that feeling that in that case, it is good. It will be the fastest way to get ICE involved and get that person out of our community for the sake of safety of everybody else.
Well,
yes,
part of the problem, Annie.
I think we agree, right? A criminal,
a criminal is a criminal.
A criminal's a criminal, right?
Right, and we have a justice system that deals with that. So if you get there and they have a long criminal history, are you saying in the moment they are performing a crime? Yes, you call in the police arrest the person, it goes through the proper channels. They're not out on the street anyway. So I don't know what makes the jump to the ICE call, because that is going to reveal itself during the actual process of our legal system.
And are we going to expect people of color to carry around papers and not just color? I mean, there are people that are not of color that are here on student visas or whatever. Does everyone have to carry their papers everywhere they go, including
I think
you and me?
This is the million-dollar question, right? And I think the concern is that when you start to see these types of overreaches, it starts with one thing, with one type of, or allegations of overreaches. It starts with, well, this is that boundary, right? That we're looking at legal status. Well, then that boundary can very easily erode to, well, now it's not just your legal status. It's now XYZ.
Yeah.
Oh, and well, you know what? No, that's not good enough either. And the thing is that right now we are in a situation with this administration, regardless whether you are red, blue, purple. I want to live in a country where there are laws and fairness, not just whoever is in power or whoever's sitting as our president.
In other words, you want the Constitution of the United States to be followed.
Exactly.
Which is interesting. We'll talk a lot about that in our
and
next
we have
segment.
a lot of calls coming in.
713-440-8870. Manny, thank you for that call. Lamar is on the line from Northeast Houston. What's on your mind? Lamar, you there? Lamar just dropped. So, Asada from the 3rd Ward, what's on your mind?
I think what's on my mind is it's interesting we're having this conversation because people of African descent have been complaining about slave patrols, which is the history of policing in the United States. Mm-hmm. The first policing departments were created as slave patrols, which I think is my general critique of Hello Houston. I have not been enthusiastic about this show because I don't understand why you don't have any black residents from Houston on a host of a show that's about Houston. And so now and of course people of African descent are standing up against ICE because that is what we call slave catchers, right, for us historically. Our lights are out. Our tail light, we didn't use a blinker. You know what I mean? We didn't give a full stop. And so again, the problem with Houston Public Radio is that it never fully represents all of us, which has been your critique. And this conversation is missing a historic context of the history of policing. So maybe you can do a segment on the history of policing to understand why this is a troubling current development that is in the legacy of police brutality against non-white citizens of this nation or people who have questionable citizenship, which people of African descent has had. But I'm very disappointed that you don't have any diversity and experience. And I'll leave with this. Einstein said, you can't solve the problem at the same level in which it was created. And if you look at who voted in this current administration and look at your demographics of the hosts on this show, your population created this problem we're in, but y'all are talking about solutions that I don't think you're equipped to talk about. So you need some black women of African descent who represented a different perspective in the voting on this current administration. Thank you.
Asada, thank you for your comments. I will just mention also on Friday when my fellow hosts weren't here, Doris Childress sat in the seat. We worked together for many years as my co-host on other programs we've done here at the station. She is an African-American woman, and we are very proud to have her on the show. And we do rotate through all aspects, I hope, of our community with the guests and the guest hosts and even the hosts themselves.
And, I do think Asada brings up a very good point. I mean, it is one of those things where not necessarily about, Hello Houston to the show and things. We really do try to always bring everybody into the fold. But we heard Asada
Asada was on the show,
right.
and she was able to speak and say that, and brings a perspective for us that we are open to and want to understand and learn more about. And she's absolutely right.
Well,
the history of we're talking about trust within law enforcement. And we understand that that is something in this country has a long history that we could go back through and look at.
And black fathers still have to have the conversation with their black sons about when you're pulled over. And I think at some point we're all pulled over for something.
Right.
Make sure that you behave in a certain way. Don't react in a certain way. I've had colleagues that have told me that they've had that conversation. They are black, and their fathers had that conversation still to this day.
Yeah.
They feel like policing is against them and not for them.
Right.
And this is only going to make it worse if policing is now related to ICE enforcements.
And I'll wrap up that last call by just saying I love the idea of a story and history of policing. And we'll look at that in the history of policing here in Houston and how it has grown and changed. And it does feed into what we're talking about right now. Let's quickly go to the phone. Let's go to Menno from Seabrook. Menno, what's on your mind?
Oh, well, a lot of things.
Menno, your call just dropped, though. Can you try again? You kind of fell out on us.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. You have been talking about being in the United States undocumented. And my comment is that being undocumented is not a criminal act.
Correct.
It is a civil violation.
Right.
Which is not punishable by prison or anything like that. It's like running a red light, as you did mention before. However, it is also punishable by deportation. And that's really, one of the aspects of the civil violation. That's all I wanted to mention.
Thank you for mentioning that. And as always, we're interested in what everyone has to say. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Yeah. And I'm afraid that the administration's not helping with that fallacy when Kristi Noem has a commercial out basically saying you're here illegally, you're committing a crime, and you need to self-deport if you ever want a chance to come back. Yeah. It sort of promotes the idea that being here undocumented is a crime. And as he just mentioned, it's not.
And, in the governor, Greg Abbott, put, I believe, a few months ago, these big billboards in Mexico that said, if you come to our country, you will be deported. So, there is that also that you will be deported if you are here illegally. But the question becomes, should the police be the ones making those types of decisions?
Well, maybe that's the argument why they call in ICE. It's not for them to decide, so they alert ICE to the fact that they've encountered someone who is whose documentation is not properly in order, for ICE to make the determination on it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a sticky wicket.
There's also just that very simplified way, of looking at that.
Or there is come and do what you were called in to do and be on your way, which if you need security and safety in a community and you're worried about people not reporting when crimes happen, not reporting when domestic abuse happens, you have to consider that these are deterrents to reaching out to law enforcement to help a situation. It's a balance, and I hope wiser minds than ours can figure those out for us.
Well, and I appreciate Asada's comments. Everyone who watches TV in Houston knows I'm a gay man. So I can talk to you about social marginalization. I can talk to you about having your rights denied. I can talk to you about being afraid of the police, because there was a time when we were. And I can tell you about watching friends die when the government didn't give a crap about them. And Ronald Reagan didn't even say the word AIDS until Rock Hudson died of it. So I understand not what it's like to be black, but I understand what it's like to be marginalized in this country, and I have every empathy for that. Sure. And I'm proud to be a host of this show, regardless of my color. But don't let that be lost on you if you're listening to us. There are minorities that are represented here, and empathizers with our city.
That's right. Coming up on Hello Houston, we're diving into one of the most powerful and often most misunderstood institutions in American government, the Supreme Court, with Seth Chandler, the Law Foundation Professor of Law at the University of Houston Law Center. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Josh Adams, General Manager of Houston Public Media. This station just lost $2.2 million in federal support annually. To keep our station strong, we've launched the Resiliency Fund, powered by community members just like you. Your support will help bridge the funding gap and ensure these programs remain free and accessible to everyone. If public media and this station matter to you, now is the time to act. Support the Resiliency Fund today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Hi, this is Matt Harrop. There's been a lot of news to cover in Houston over the last few months. Keep listening to Houston Public Media for the latest, and if you've got a car, truck, boat, or RV you don't need anymore, donate it to the station. It could be worth hundreds of dollars in support. The donation process is easy for you, and we'll pick up your vehicle in any condition. Here's how to get started. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org/cars to learn more. Thank you.
You can fit in when you're in England by grabbing dinner with a side of friendly conversation at the local pub.
We all go to the pub.
Get tips for enjoying the pub cuisine of Britain. For planning a dream trip without having to win the lottery.
There are many ways to travel the world on a budget.
And an insider's view of how the Dutch see themselves.
Actually, we call people living in North Holland cheeseheads.
On the next Travel with Rick Steves.
It's on this Saturday morning at 6 o'clock.
Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details at 730-2525 or at johnmooreservices.com.
Support comes from the Eternal Gandhi Museum, Houston, highlighting the power of nonviolent conflict resolution through examples of peace leaders worldwide. Now open. Field trips and group visits available. More at egmh.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Today we're diving into one of the most powerful and often most misunderstood institutions in American government, the Supreme Court. From blockbuster decisions that make headlines to quieter rulings that reshape the law for generations, the court plays a pivotal role in shaping our society. But how does it actually work behind the scenes? How do justices decide which cases to hear? And once a decision is handed down, what are the rulings actually referring to? And how should we interpret them? To help us unpack all of this, we're joined by Seth Chandler, the Law Foundation Professor of Law at the University of Houston Law Center. Seth, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
Okay, I want to start right with the misunderstanding people have about what the Supreme Court is actually deciding. And the reason I bring this up is often we see a ruling takes place and they say, now these are the cases, this was the case that was solved. But actually, it's more about procedure, policy, and understanding how these decisions in the lower courts were actually justly or unjustly decided, and that's what the court is actually looking at, correct?
That's correct. In about 98% of the cases that the Supreme Court takes, they are acting in what's called an appellate capacity. They are reviewing the decisions of other courts. They're not just acting like a trial court or something like that, which sits and hears evidence. Instead, they're trying to see what other courts have done and to determine whether the process and the decision that emerged from those courts complied with either a statute that was on the books or the Constitution or a regulation.
So they're looking at case law to make sure that those decisions followed the law.
That's correct. They're looking at case law. They may be looking at the raw text of statutes or regulations as well.
So I think, Seth, what ends up is my big question, and I think for many, is that what I want to understand is the extent to which the courts are acting as a check on President Trump as he tries to amass more power, or whether the courts are actually helping him amass that power as we look at this.
Well, as a practical matter, in the past 6 months, the Supreme Court has facilitated the president's attempts to increase his power. I don't think there's really any dispute about that. There were many people who would say, and they did that correctly, but certainly his rulings with respect to birthright citizenship, with respect to dismantling of the Department of Education, with respect to the ability to fire employees or commissioners without cause, all of those help further what President Trump wants. And so if you simply look at the effect, there's no question that what they've done has been to help President Trump. But as I said, they would profess that they're just following the law, and he's entitled to that power in the first place.
So, what's your take on the Garcia case, where they said you should facilitate the return of this man who was sent to El Salvador, and left it at that?
Right. So that's a case where I think the Supreme Court was acting in a genteel way, making a suggestion, fully expecting the president to honor it and not play super hardball. But clearly President Trump likes to play hardball, at least at first. And he took advantage, I would say, of the pleasant phrasing of the Supreme Court opinion in order to continue to basically, send people to South Sudan or send people to these awful prisons in El Salvador.
Let's look into that a little deeper, because my concern when it happened was they had made a ruling with the word facilitate, and then everybody else was trying to interpret what the word meant. Why didn't the Supreme Court, or why don't the Supreme Court members step out and define what they meant? Why, once it was done, they seemed to retreat back into the halls of the Supreme Court and left it for us to figure out?
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, there's nothing special in some sense. That is, that's the ordinary practice. They issue an opinion and they hope that they've written it clearly enough so that it can be interpreted either by political figures or by other courts. And they don't generally go back and fix their work. And part of that is simply that this is A, tradition, and B, it's sort of part of the case method, that the Supreme Court is not there to just decide legal matters in the abstract. Rather, it's there to try and decide particular cases that come before them as shaped by the attorneys who are representing the parties. And there really isn't a procedure that says, gosh, Supreme Court, we really don't know what the heck you meant. Could you try again? That procedure doesn't really exist. Maybe it should, but it doesn't.
Why doesn't it, though? Why, if anybody sends out information and people don't understand the intent or the meaning of the information, why is it looked at as maybe a weakness or a not their part job to define it if it is misunderstood?
I think because smart lawyers would use that as an ability to relitigate everything. You can always find ambiguity in virtually anything the Supreme Court says, and they would sort of never be done with anything. And so the burden on the Supreme Court is to write their opinions clearly enough and forcefully enough to try and minimize the ambiguity risk. They're never going to get rid of it entirely. Words are inherently ambiguous, but they ought to try and do it in a careful way so that people have clear directions. And in this case, it appears they failed.
Well, has the Trump administration had any major policy defeats at the Supreme Court level?
Yes, although I'm having a hard time putting my finger on them. Certainly in major cases, they have a pretty good track record this past term.
But even in the way Celeste phrases that question to you about policy decision, like even the most recent thing, and I can't remember what the case was, but basically what they did was they removed a stay until earlier courts or lower courts could finish the process of going through litigating it. And in the case, it was that this decision had been made, and a court said, no, we have to pause until we've got a solution to it. The Supreme Court came in and said, no, you can't put a stay on it, but you can still litigate it. But then the media reports it as the Supreme Court is in favor of this decision. How do you parse that?
Well, I think the media in some sense is doing a good job in that they're looking at the practicalities of the situation. And in many cases, postponing relief has major effects. Right. So let's take the case, and this may be the one you were thinking of, where the president wants to fire members of the Consumer Product Safety Commission because he would prefer to put people in there who are more aligned with his policy beliefs. And the problem for the president is that there's a Supreme Court precedent dating back to the 1930s saying that Congress can actually insulate these people from presidential firings unless they've done something wrong. And President Trump wasn't saying they'd done anything criminal or bad. He just didn't like their beliefs. So you have two conflicting harms here. One is, if the president is right, well, his efforts to get the people he wants on the Consumer Product Safety Commission are being thwarted. If the president's wrong, two harms. First, you're sort of overturning a Supreme Court precedent without really thinking about it. And secondly, those people have a right to their jobs and to serve out the terms that they were appointed to serve. What's interesting is that the Supreme Court thought that first harm, that, the president won't get to put his people in these positions, outweighed the second harm, and they made that decision even though the people whose jobs had been lost had a Supreme Court precedent squarely on their side.
But then why not litigate the case instead of just dealing with the stay? If this is their opinion and this is what they're trying to impact, and I think this is what most people wonder, why not just then decide?
Yeah. A very good question, and that's exactly what Justice Kavanaugh said, actually, in his concurrence in that case. He's basically saying, these are difficult issues. They're controversial issues. It's here. We sort of know what the issues are. Let's actually decide it on the merits. The contrary view, just so you understand, is that who's to say what an important case is? And everyone's going to be saying their case is important. And the Supreme Court only has a very finite amount of time. They get thousands of petitions every year, and they take about 70 cases. And they're humans, and there's just a limit to what they can decide in a careful manner. And if you were to open the door to every time there's a stay, we've got to litigate the merits because otherwise it takes too long. The fear, I'm not saying this is right, but the fear is that you'd never be able to get anything done.
Right.
Well, it is what it is as far as ideology, right? I mean, everyone knows this is a right-leaning court because they've made it clear. So doesn't that open the gates for all of these cases that people want to be solved in a very right-leaning way to go to the Supreme Court? And because now they have become political. And what does one do about that?
Right. So there's a question, of course, as to whether this is really anything different or it's just different people whose oxes have been gored. So, for example, imagine we were in the 1960s. You would be complaining, perhaps, that all these people are going to the Supreme Court because it was stacked by, liberals on the Warren Court who were revolutionizing American law. And so it is true that this is a conservative court, and I think it's also true to say that it's very difficult in these close cases to sort of separate out ideology. There's a reason that there are, it's 6-3, 6-3, 6-3. It's not a random 3. If this were just reasonable people disagreeing, you'd expect it to be random, but it's not random. And the reason it's not random is because when the Constitution or statutes are unclear, different values come into play in sort of breaking ties. And that's what I think you're saying. And right now you're seeing those ties are being broken in favor of what you might call a conservative ideology, which is encouraging people with conservative beliefs to take their cases to the Supreme Court.
So I want to go back to, and it's to this point that you're making right now, and the Frank bringing up that we have much more of a conservative judges, but something that I learned, I'm going to go back into my third grade social studies, and something that I hold on to is that our country, our government was made to have layers of checks and balances. And so we're looking to the courts to uphold essentially that fairness. And if I understand my third grade social studies, Congress in many ways was also meant to be another form of checks and balances to our president. And this isn't necessarily a Trump thing. We saw this in the Biden administration. We saw it in the Bush administration. Have we lost that?
Well, we've only lost it to the extent that Congress agrees with the president.
Right. But and so if Congress continues to agree with the president, which Congress would usually be the one to decipher the policy aspect of it. And then we look to our courts to look at the legal aspect of it. Now we're looking at our courts to look at the policy and the legal aspect of it.
Right. So what your third grade class might have neglected was that, yes, there are checks and balances, but they're not supposed to be so severe that where the Congress and president agree on something, and it is in conformity with the law, that the courts are authorized then to just overturn it because the courts think that what Congress and the president is doing is a bad idea. The courts, in theory, have limited power, and they're only supposed to overturn what the president and Congress have done when it either violates the Constitution, a treaty, or some prior law of Congress. They don't have limitless power to say, we really think that courts should have the authority to issue broad injunctions. And yes, the statute doesn't say so, but that's stupid. Let's increase the powers of the legislature. That's correct. And there's a fine line in all of these things between legislating and judicial ruling on a lot of these cases, but at least there's some effort to hold that line.
Speaking of fine lines, too, we often talk about the political bent of the Supreme Court, which I find wrong. A misunderstanding, I think, it's that it's more of a legal ideology and that a conservative Congress, a conservative president is going to put in someone whose legal ideologies tend to fall more in the conservative camp, but that theoretically the political policy should not be interfering with the justices, correct?
Yes, but it's difficult to disentangle the two. So let's take gun control, for example. The Supreme Court a few years back said we should determine whether gun control is appropriate by whether you can find an analogous law at the time of the Constitution's founding. Well, that's a very difficult inquiry because the time of the Constitution's founding, the world looked very, very different from the way it was today, and people were thinking about different sorts of problems that exist today. And so the consequence of that is that it makes it quite difficult, actually, to enforce gun control laws because you're not really going to find an analogous law. So methodology and results end up being intertwined. And in some sense, the methodology is not political. Telling people to look at what happened in history is something a liberal might very well embrace, particularly maybe when it comes to free speech or freedom of religion or something like that. But as it turns out, choices of methodology, these sort of technical things that the court does, ends up having serious consequences on the outcome of cases, which in turn affects, the way society functions.
Do we see over time justices moving more toward the centrist position, or even some will claim they move more toward a more liberal position over time? Is that accurate or not?
I think it may have been accurate at some times, and some have said, all those liberal clerks coming out of Yale and Harvard were infecting these right-thinking justices with their radical beliefs, and that some justices did move over time. Certainly Justice Blackmun, for example, moved considerably over time. These days, though, the vetting process, the brutal confirmation process that justices go through tends to really deter that. They sort of lock themselves in during the confirmation process.
I want to ask that too. Do you think Alito and Thomas will step down intentionally during this Trump term so that he can appoint two more very conservative justices?
I don't have any inside information on that. And Justice Alito is not that old. Justice Thomas is older, and so it's possible he might be interested in doing that. But, when you say the justices aren't political, I mean, that's sort of belied by the very fact that you're asking me that question, that they would consider who's in office as determining when they should step down. If they were apolitical, it would just be a matter of health, or they want to go back to New Hampshire or whatever it is. But the very fact that they're considering that and that these justices are vetted by the president for political ideology, it's just, I think, a fantasy to say that these are somehow pure umpires just calling balls and strikes.
Which, Professor Chandler, it seems as if when we're looking at this from a political standpoint and when we're looking at our legal systems with political glasses, in some ways, we're just choosing teams, right? And depending on whose team you're on, if you are, and I'm just using this as an example because he's our current president, your team, President Trump, everything he does is great and it's lawful. If you're anti that, everything he does is, improper and illegal. Can our democracy stand if our courts are held to that type of partisan standard?
No. You have to exercise independent judgment or there's no point. And I am concerned about sort of the lack of critical thinking that's going on and either saying, well, President Biden did it, so it must be right, or President Trump did it, and it's not right. And I would be betraying them as opposed to thinking about the country if I were to voice opposition. And unfortunately, I think we're heading into a culture where personal loyalty is starting to outweigh values and ideology. And if you ask me what troubles me, that's something that troubles me.
Professor Chandler, we have so many more
Yes.
questions, but the time is not on our side.
You're going to
Come
have to come back. Seth
Okay,
Chandler is the Law Foundation Professor of Law at the University of Houston Law Center. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And coming up, we'll talk about a new show at the Alley Theater. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
With federal support gone, Houston Public Media needs a stronger foundation for the future. The Houston Public Media Resiliency Fund is our response to ensure this service remains strong, stable, and community-powered. Your gift today helps us stay on the air tomorrow and the day after that. Give now to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
At 8 p.m.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, a night of mystery and intrigue with Father Brown at 7, followed by the Sister Boniface Mysteries at 8 and Death in Paradise at 9. Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, or stream online. Comes from Houston Grand Opera, presenting their 25-26 season, including the first ever presentations of Puccini's Il Trittico, Silent Night, and Robert Wilson's fantasy production of Messiah. Season subscriptions and more at hgo.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To share your thoughts on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
All right, The Mirror Cracked is a thrilling mystery based on Agatha Christie's 1962 novel of the same name. It's currently on stage at the Alley Theater through August 24th, and of course it features the iconic Miss Marple. I know, but big debut there. This adaptation has glamour and suspense and the classic whodunit. It's just all around a very nice version of The Mirror Cracked. And with us now is Houston actress Susan Koozin.
Yay! Hi.
Hey, Susan.
Good to see you all.
You get to be Miss Marple.
Right.
Yes.
The thing that's so fascinating about this is that I never realized this character has never been on the U.S. stage before.
I know.
It's been in book.
I know.
It's been on stage in other places. It's been in film. You're premiering Miss Marple in the U.S. live on stage. That's kind of cool.
That just made me sweat a little bit.
I bet. How do you create your own Miss Marple? We've all seen Angela Lansbury, and we've seen so many Miss Marples out there. How do you create your own Miss Marple?
Well, that was the question. You know, it was pretty daunting when I thought about approaching this after seeing so many fabulous Miss Marples, like you say. I guess for me, I tried to pull a little bit of my favorite qualities of each of the Miss Marples I had watched, and then tried to incorporate some of my own within it. But I love some of the charm. I love the humor that Helen Hayes brought. I love the twinkle in the eye of, Angela Lansbury. I like the quiet stillness of Joan Hickson. So just tried to kind of piece some of that together. And
so did you just pull from memory of those, or knowing you were going to play this part, you went back and studied them all?
I did, because it had been a while since I had watched any of those series. So I did sort of go back and, oh boy, I better do my research. And,
so then playing it, what did you find in this character maybe they missed or wasn't in their interpretations, or something that you were like, hey, this is what makes it fresh for me today?
She has a limp.
They never exploited her.
Yeah. Well, one thing, actually, it's funny you say the limp. One thing in this adaptation, she is laid up with an injured ankle. Right. So I have crutches. I'm in a chair a lot of the time. I have a cane. So that in itself, sort of
physicality.
Physicality of that. It inhibits her, but it also sort of allows her to sort of revel in her listening skills and watching, because people have to bring the information to her.
And are you playing to the script? I mean, I think we all know how the mirror cracked ends up. I
No, we don't.
No, spoiler alert.
Well,
You'd be
okay.
amazed how many people don't. I'm sure that come
that's
in and
my-
discover
it's
this
true.
for the first time.
Yeah,
that's
it's
my
true.
question. That's my question. Do you play it straight off the script? There's no surprises that those of us who've seen it a couple of times would be, oh, well, they veered a bit.
You know, it is somewhat different than the movie and
Okay.
somewhat different than the book. So this adaptation does take some liberty that may
Good.
surprise some people.
Good.
Yes.
That's great.
Okay, I've asked this question of a bunch of actors who have sat in that seat, and I'm always curious their answer because you know how this plot turns out. You know what happens.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully at this point, at least. When you're reading through the script, then you see the moments where it's like, oh, that's the giveaway line. That's the. How do you know how to play those without hitting it too hard or burying it too deep? Because you know that's something the audience, if they know that, it unravels. How do you figure it?
Right.
The
Yeah,
balance.
it's hard to kind of stay straight in those moments. You know, I have the luxury as Miss Marple where part of her quality is to keep it hidden. You know, the knowing. The knowing without showing.
Yeah.
So part of that I can sort of hide behind as the character, but it is really interesting to see where people respond. Sometimes it's surprising.
Yeah.
And sometimes they think they're onto something, and it's fun to know that they're really not.
But then
Yeah.
you can
You know,
play
it-
and slide them
Yeah.
towards something.
Yeah,
like,
you can
oh,
kind of
they-
lean into
they're
that a
going
little
this way.
bit.
Well, part of the fun is that she was always portrayed as maybe not the smartest person in the room, and then of course she is the smartest person
in the room.
Do you play it that way? And we've got to hear a little. Are you playing it British?
Yes.
You have an accent?
Can we
Yes,
can we
I
hear
do.
can we hear a little of that?
Oh
Miss
my
Marple.
goodness!
these
Let's see. Well, let's see. Certainty without proof is no certainty at all. I'm always correcting Inspector Craddock. He's like a nephew to me, so we have a great banter back and forth as he's trying to solve the case, but it's really the two of us. And he's leaning on me quite a bit to solve it, which
We
is
have
fun.
known each other a million years here in town, and I've seen you in so many things. Are people surprised by this Susan Koozin, and maybe to other ones we've seen you in other shows and more broad characters, maybe?
Right. I hope so. I hope that they are a little bit surprised. What's so fun for me in this one is the range of this character. You know, I get to be not only an older woman, which is always fun for me, but also she's quite deep. She's quite vulnerable at times. She's very strong at times. She's commanding at times, and yet. Because she's overlooked, or there are a lot of assumptions made because of her age and her demeanor. Sometimes that's overlooked, and I don't know. There's a lot of range in her that is great fun as the actress.
Really quick,
for me.
before we run out of time, too.
Yes.
You're carrying the weight of summer chills on those little shoulders of yours. That is just phenomenal because it's such a mainstay in the Houston summer community and theater. At the Alley Theater, people look forward to it every year, and you're the one now.
It's such an honor, and I've been lucky enough to be a part of the last, I think, 5 summer chills, and it really is a thing. It really brings Houston out, and it's a thrill every time to see those packed houses and see how people respond to.
And we have one YouTube comment that they want to know, did you ever catch yourself knitting or sipping tea off stage to stay in Miss Marple's mindset?
Well, I definitely had to practice knitting.
Yeah.
I didn't have to practice sipping tea, but I definitely had to practice knitting because I'm not a knitter.
Yeah.
But I've had to knit in several shows now, so it came in
it's
handy.
good.
Yeah.
Susan Koozin is a Houston actress currently playing Miss Marple in The Mirror Cracked. Susan, thank you so much for joining us
I
today
appreciate
on Hello
you.
Houston.
Thank you.
The Mirror Cracked is running at the Alley Theater now through August 24th. And coming up on Hello Houston, we'll continue diving into the top stories of the day. Stay with us.
Top
stories of the day. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
We have a 30% chance of an afternoon shower or thunder shower later today. Right now, it's 86. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston, News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we'll continue discussing today's top stories, including a survey that found that the 10 most popular books taught in the U.S. classrooms today were all books that were published more than 60 years ago. I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also talk with Dr. Robin Armstrong, who is the commissioner for Precinct 4 in Galveston County and serves on the Finance Commission of the Texas Republican National Committee. He joins us to give us the Republican view on redistricting.
And I'm Ernie Manous. We'll also share our latest pop culture obsessions for our regular Thursday feature, Current Obsessions.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call or text us, 713-440-8870, or email us, talk@hellohouston.org. And you can watch us on YouTube. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. U.S. trade relations with Mexico remain somewhat up in the air as President Trump announced today that in their case he is extending tomorrow's tariffs deadline by 90 days. The rate will sit at 25% until issues between the two nations are resolved. The president has set tomorrow as a deadline for tariff decisions involving dozens of countries. As NPR's Scott Horsley reports, the idea has been to boost U.S. prosperity by leveling the field in international tariffs. But how this is playing out remains to be seen, as the chairman of the Federal Reserve has noted.
Chairman Jerome Powell noted yesterday that the government is collecting around $30 billion a month in tariffs. That money has to come from somebody. Powell says so far it doesn't look as if foreign companies are picking up much of the tab. Instead, it's mostly being paid by U.S. importers, retailers, and, in some cases, consumers.
NPR's Scott Horsley. Multiple national security officials who previously served under President Biden have recently been ousted from government or had job offers rescinded. NPR's Jenna McLaughlin reports those moves often follow social media outcry from far-right activists.
While it's not uncommon for presidents to clean house and appoint their own advisors across government agencies, the Trump White House may have taken that tradition to a new level. In recent months, top national security officials have been pushed out of senior government roles. Many don't have a political background and have served under Democratic and Republican administrations. That includes April Doss, who spent over a decade serving at the National Security Agency, most recently as its top lawyer, and Jen Easterly, the former head of DHS's cyber agency, who had a West Point job offer rescinded. Right-wing political activist Laura Loomer had pushed for both removals, leading observers to believe she wields influence over the White House. Jenna McLaughlin, NPR News.
Russia launched a combined air attack on Ukraine, targeting the capital. NPR's Hanna Polymarenko reports from Kyiv that, according to local authorities, at least 11 people were killed and more than 93 others were wounded.
The Ukrainian State Emergency Service posted a video of a rescue operation in one of Kyiv's districts, in which a wounded man is being pulled out of the rubble. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko says there were 54 apartments in the part of the building that was destroyed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called the attack, quote, vile and specially calculated to overwhelm the air defense. He wrote that it was Russia's response to the desire of Ukraine, America, and Europe for peace. Zelensky also called on Ukraine's allies to make efforts to bring Russia to the negotiation table. Hanna Polymarenko, NPR News, Kyiv.
On Wall Street at this hour, the Dow down 26 points, the Nasdaq up 203. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. The city of Houston might spend more disaster recovery dollars on home repairs and housing after Mayor John Whitmire signaled support for the shift on Wednesday. The issue of how to spend federal dollars awarded after the derecho wind event and Hurricane Beryl has been deeply contentious at City Hall. Our Dominic Anthony Walsh reports.
Whitmire's change of position on how to spend the $315 million marks a major win for housing advocates and community organizers. His administration initially planned to spend no money on housing or home repairs. After backlash, that was increased to $50 million. Councilmember Tiffany Thomas, who chairs the Housing Committee, said that still was not enough and pushed for another increase to $100 million. Now, Whitmire agrees.
I respect her, so listening to her, listening to community, of course, we're going to accept her amendment.
If the change is approved by the rest of City Council, the city will reduce the amount allocated for backup power generators at city facilities from $150 million to $100 million. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
Fort Bend County is looking to extend a toll road through the rural village of Fairchilds. The expansion comes as the county sees rapid growth and development, but some village residents are worried they could be displaced or it could interrupt their quiet way of life. Jennifer Scanlon has started a petition. They're asking the county to change the route.
I love the fact that we're away from the city, of course, as far away as we can be away from the city. But, it's a small community. We have very friendly neighbors.
More than 2,200 people have signed the petition so far. And a man from Cyprus in charge of a cryptocurrency organization has been indicted for his role in an alleged scheme to defraud investors. Brian Fontenot is the chief technology officer for XUSD Blockchain Holdings. He's charged with 91 counts, including racketeering and various forms of theft. Fontenot is in the Galveston County Jail awaiting extradition to Georgia, which is where the multi-agency investigation is taking place. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Houston.
We're back for the second hour. Thank you for joining us, whether you're listening in your radio on 88.7 or watching us on YouTube.
Yes, I enjoyed that last hour. It was a very lively hour. It went so fast.
Too.
I was thinking after Susan left, who is playing Miss Marples over at the Alley Theater, about that question. I always ask people who are in mysteries about giving away. I was thinking about myself as an actor, and it would be like, I'll take some cheese with that knife over. I would so ruin every mystery. I would give away all of the little, I wouldn't know how to balance it out. I'm just so obvious. Yes. They were saying to me when they were leaving, they were thanking us for doing the coverage we do and how we support the arts community here. And my reaction back to them, which I think we should share, is the fact we are so fortunate that we live in a city, in a community that has such amazing local talent. And my joke to them was, could you imagine if we lived in a city that had terrible local talent? What would I talk about? They make it easy for us because we have so many wonderful performers and artists and musicians.
And beautiful theaters.
Yeah.
Just going to the theater is fun, and hopefully you get a good show out of it. But just being there, it's just great. Acoustics and everything.
Yeah. Every day we give you the art, the theater of conversation, and you can watch it on YouTube. Just go to our YouTube. Did you like that segue? Go to our YouTube channel. We are the Houston Public Media channel on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell.
Hey, there's a little rain out there. I'm looking at the radar. Mostly coastal.
Okay.
But there, the chance that we're going to get some of it. But where we're seeing some rain is actually where there's also some heat advisories out toward Beaumont. So that will help. Little rain helps with the heat advisory.
Oh, but there's nothing worse than after the rain moves and it's hot and then it's that humid.
Well, there's that. Yeah, there's always that.
It is the last day of July, July 31st.
We were talking about this the other day in one of
How
our
do I know
recording
that?
one of our recording sessions. Is that Frank knows the little poem though? What is the poem?
30 days hath September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, except February, which has 24 plus 4, till leap year gives it 1 day more.
That's our.
How do you not know that poem?
I don't know. And then you also do a thing. I still don't get the thing with your knuckles on your hand.
Start on a top knuckle. You go January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. Count it again, and the knuckles have the 31 days, and the others have 30 or less.
Well, here we are.
Always full of education for you here on Hello Houston.
And your food plates on the left, they both have 4 letters, and the water goes on the right. So if you ever sit down at a gala and you've got 10 people there, and it's like, well, which is my bread plate? It's the one on the left.
That's right.
Left. Well, you could do that too. Yes.
Anyway, we've been talking a lot on this show about the redistricting maps, and we're going to be talking
on
about
the left
that
or the right.
On the left or the right, we're going to be talking about that with Dr. Robin Armstrong. He is a commissioner for Precinct 4 in Galveston County, and he's also a finance commissioner for the Texas Republican National Committee. He'll give us the Republican view on this redistricting and help us understand all sides of this issue. Coming up a little bit in the show. We always do like to start the show, though, with our headline start of each hour. And Celeste, take us away. Yes. This is a fun story.
So it is. It's a really interesting one because as we were just talking about, today is the last day of July. And so as we go into August, it's back to school and it's just right around the corner. And apparently curriculum makers do not think anything written in the last 60 years is worth teaching in classrooms. Per a survey of 4,000 teachers, the 10 most popular books taught in the U.S. classrooms today were all published more than 60 years ago, and the list hardly changes over time. 6 of the 10 titles were also among the most popular in 1989. So just to name a few of those, Romeo and Juliet, The Great Gatsby, The Crucible, Macbeth, Of Mice and Men, To Kill a Mockingbird, Night, Hamlet, Fahrenheit 451, and Frankenstein. Many teachers say they'd prefer to assign new books, but are censored by school districts, local governments, and parents. One of the most censored books per the survey is The Handmaid's Tale. Should school teach from newer books, or do the classics still work? Give us a call. Now is the time to chime in, 713-440-8870.
So tell me, what book really impressed you as a child? And I don't mean like a 5th grade to 8th grade.
So, well, I would say for me, the first chapter book that I ever read was Bridge to Terabithia, and I believe it was in 4th grade, and It changed my life. It made me fall in love with characters and stories, and I loved it. And so my take on this is classics are classics. Children need to know classics.
Yeah, there's a reason a classic is a classic, why they endure and last the test of time. What I'm curious is, of recent books, and this is for you listening out there or watching us on YouTube, what current book or recently popular book do you think should be added to curriculum? I'd be curious to hear what people think is out there. 713-440-8870. Text us or give us a call or email us, talk@hellohouston.org.
Do the kids? My first big boy book was The Outsiders.
Yeah,
I remember reading
I remember that one. I remember that one. Yeah.
And I mean, it was our required English reading in 5th grade.
Old
I
Yeller.
remember that. But I fell in love with big boy books. I remember I was in 8th grade. I'm reading The Godfather, which is
little advanced for an 8th grader.
You know what? It was like 1973 or 4, and
it was the hot book.
And I remember my 8th grade teacher saying, "That's trash. I can't believe you're reading that."
Yeah.
There was a pretty good chapter, but all in all, I was they made it into 3 movies.
Yeah,
well, we're curious to find out what our listeners think are interesting books at 713-440-8870. What should be added to curriculum? Ruff from Montrose is on the line. What's on your mind?
Hi, yeah. It's funny that you bring this up because I just started listening to The Great Gatsby again.
Yeah.
While driving this week, and that's something that, as you mentioned, is in a lot of high school curriculums, and something that I read a couple times, I think in middle school and in high school.
I love the fact that you mentioned listening. I love listening to audiobooks. We spend so much time in this community in our cars. They're a great way to help move you through a book and share great literature with you.
And The Great Gatsby, Rolf, it's all about cheating. And the whole book is about cheating. Either cheating on your spouse or cheating on your partner or cheating society or cheating yourself, cheating in the golf tournament. It's all about cheating. That's the whole premise of The Great Gatsby. It's not great. It's not a great book for teaching kids about how you should go about life. And yet it's on the list as one of the am I wrong, Rolf? Are you still there?
Rolf, did you hang up on Frank?
No, I'm still here. I think, it's an interesting the way you frame it, that it's about cheating. It's true. And I think, you could say that it provides a bad example, or you could say that it provides an example of, how not to live.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think like the themes are kind of hard to digest for somebody maybe in high school, especially somebody who doesn't really want to read it. I think you have to weigh that as well when you're with it.
Rolf, I got a quick question for you here, too, on the tail end of this. I'm curious for folks who go back to books repeatedly. And you said that, this is the third time I think you said you've gone through Great Gatsby. What is it about it that draws you back each time?
Well, I enjoy these books about tragic figures like that. Various pieces of media. Actually, this is the first time going back to reading it after high school. It's been about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, Shakespeare made the list twice. So if you like tragic figures, you're on the right book list. That's for sure.
Well, and it's also interesting that Rolf brings up Charles Dickens, because when I was in London and I was at the National Portrait Gallery, I saw a portrait of Charles Dickens. And when I was reading about it, basically the information that they were talking about, the author that authored The Great Gatsby, was saying how when the painter, Ari Scheffer, who's a Dutch-French painter, was painting him, he was very upset because Charles Dickens would take a long breaks in sitting for this portrait, because at the time Charles Dickens was writing Little Dorrit, and Little Dorrit was about debtor's prison. And in that time, Victorian men, women, and children were being thrown into prison for unpaid debts. And Charles Dickens thought that that was wrong, essentially, wanted to write about this story about children and women, and sometimes it was questionable. And so when you look at that and you look at today, a student who might not fully understand the author or the time or what was happening or even wanting just to read, we have that education. We have those teachers there to say, no, this will be important to you at some point. You will see these themes in your life.
Rolf, I want to thank you for giving a call and for sharing it. And let us know if Great Gatsby turns out the same way this time when you get to the end. I'm just curious. I think it will. Anyway, let's continue on. 713-440-8870. Yuma, calling from Conroe. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say how ironic I think it is that Fahrenheit 451 is one of the books that are still okay, even though it's about getting rid of books.
There is a bit of irony there, isn't there?
And I don't know.
There is.
I don't know a kid that's ever said, "Oh, let's read more Shakespeare." I mean,
exactly.
It's hard to get through Shakespeare when you're in the 8th or 9th grade. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yuma, thank you very much for calling and sharing that insight with us. We're interested if you have a book that either impacted you reading it through school, or one that you think should be on the list now that may be a more recent book. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
I think Orwell's 1984 should be absolute reading for everyone in this country right now.
It probably is on the list, isn't it?
I'm sure it's on the list.
Celeste's list is a bit
Mine
abbreviated.
was just abbreviated, the top 10, I think it was. Alex Garza says, as a kid, Wayside School series. I'm actually reading that to my daughter right now, by Lewis Sackar, and The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
For me, Little House on the Prairie also was a big one.
Well, and we had
Frank, did you see what Miguel wrote on YouTube?
Yeah. Miguel says,
Castro.
I remember reading The Godfather and creating my own character map. There were so many characters. The movie helped sort it out.
Oh, my!
There were a lot of characters.
I have always loved a book where when in the first couple pages you see it's got a breakdown of who all the characters are in the book. Because I get lost in characters. I'm much more a visual person's like, so I can see someone, I remember their face, but I never remember names. And when I read, that's the same problem I have, and I'm like, which character was that? Who that? And then on audiobooks, it's so hard because once they've introduced them, you're either there or you're not there, and if that name comes up later, it's so hard to go back.
Did you ever read Jaws? I know everybody's seen the movie.
No,
I read Jaws, and I was about 13 or 14 when I read it, and I sat there and read the whole. It was the first time I read a book cover to cover without stopping. It was terrifying, and I couldn't put it down. So if you've never read Jaws, you should probably read it.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert: people get eaten.
Yeah. 713-440-8870. Sully from Sharpstown is on the line. Sully, what are you reading, or what's your advice?
Well, I noticed listening to the list, that there was nothing by Hemingway.
Old Man the Sea has to be on there. Has to be.
No, I don't think so.
It should be.
I'm going to try to find the full list. I'll try to find it at some point. We'll try. Yeah. Hemingway.
For Whom the Bell Tolls. He's got to be on the list.
Sully, do you have a favorite from Hemingway?
The Old Man and the Sea is certainly the simplest, but I've read pretty much all of them.
Yeah. Do you...
Bragg, The Green Hills of Africa was dedicated to my grandfather.
Do you have anything of recent that you think should be on the must-read for students in great literature of the modern day?
Well, I wouldn't consider it great literature, but there's a series of 13 or 14 books about a guy named Miles Vorkosigan. He's from a small interplanetary empire, and what makes me like and I've read them. I read them all, like every 3 or 4 years. I go back. They're people. The people he's talking about are people I would like to know. At least a couple of times in every book, there's a little particular phrase that rings incredibly deep.
Yeah.
For instance, in one scene, she drops the sentence that says, "An honor is not diminished by."
Sully, I'm so sad. Your phone keeps cracking up on us, so I'm going to have to let you go. Folks are probably having a little trouble understanding you, but I appreciate it, and I think we got a lot out of that call. Thank you for that.
We did.
713-440-8870. Lynn is on the phone from the medical center. Lynn, what's on your mind?
Hi. Well, I'm a teacher, and I taught sixth graders, and I taught eighth graders also. I introduced my eighth graders to Night, and I introduced my sixth graders to the circuit. And my eighth graders it was a hard read, but they could see parallels as to what's going on in the world. And my sixth graders, when we read The Circuit by Francisco Jimenez, which is more contemporary literature, but it's a true story, they could also see the similarities about immigration and border patrol, border security. So it made me realize that these middle schoolers, they're very aware of what's going on in our world. And some of the same issues that we deal with now, you can find in the classics.
And see, I think that's what makes a classic a classic, the human experience.
Lynn, I have a question for Lynn. Yeah. Lynn, do you think The Handmaid's Tale should be censored from our children?
I think you'd have to do an older audience for that. I would be very nervous to read that with my students. I was nervous to read Night, but it is not banned in my district. But you just never know. I did read The Circuit once, and I had a student write me a very, he was very upset. He did not like the topic, and he was going to tell his family and his pastor. So I think if I taught The Handmaid's Tale, I'd have to have permission from the parents first.
Yeah. Is 1984 still on the list?
It is, actually. My coworker,
she taught that to her 8th graders.
Yeah.
Lynn,
Lynn,
thank you
thanks.
so much for calling. 713-440-8870. Let's grab Erica real quick. Erica from Spring, what are you thinking?
One book that I do recommend that is wonderful and every woman should read is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Girl
I
with
read
the
that
Dragon
cover.
Tattoo.
Yes,
Oh.
I think it was made into a couple of pictures. The American version was not that great.
Right.
But the book, oh my gosh, it's just, it probably be a damn book.
Well, and if you watch it in its
educational-
original language, they're going to have the subtitles, so you get to read it again.
Yes.
And you see a
it's
better
wonderful
film.
book. Yes, it's a wonderful. It touches upon very delicate subjects such as sexual trafficking, rape, domestic abuse. It touches upon very difficult themes, but it's something that every woman should read about.
Erica, thank you very much for calling in and sharing that with us. Marty from River Oaks also suggested The Hunger Games should be on the list.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's a hard read,
And we have
actually.
another call from Sophia from Southwest Houston. Sophia, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. I would say every book by Louisa May Alcott. When I was an emergent reader, I read Little Women, then I read Little Men, which my mother said was a throwaway. And also, I read Joe's Voice. Those books were excellent books. Also, I would say Thomas Hardy, Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I read it when I was 14. And Jude the Obscure. Thomas Hardy, he probably is on the list somewhere. Because Tess of the D'Urbervilles is about a woman who becomes pregnant and has a baby out of wedlock. And then when she's married, her husband puts her down. I loved those books. And people told my mother, why are you letting her read this book? And she told me, I told them, half her friends are going to get knocked up before they get to their senior year.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Erica, thank you for your call. We need to do a segment of books that have
We should.
impacted people's lives.
And we have on our YouTube, a couple people have sent in here, there, says The Firm, Dante's Inferno is something that, Dragonfly Mike says Dante's Inferno is something that stuffed me up. Also The Hobbit, I've heard The Hobbit is very good. Let's see.
But those whole Hobbit
Things Fall Apart.
Those whole Hobbit Tolkien books, they're so long.
Yes.
I'm a lazy reader. Get
Yes.
into it for me. I don't have time for
Asimov's
that.
Foundation series, Things Fall Apart, Unbroken. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of really. We're going to have to just do like a segment all about books.
All about books.
Yeah,
Which
books that impact you, books that the
Changed your
first
life.
book that grabbed your attention that made you want to read more. There was
gosh,
a
I
book as a
cried,
little
cried,
kid. I got it at the library and I cannot remember the name of it. It's so bizarre. And I remember sitting under a tree in our backyard and just reading the entire book in one sitting. And it had something to do, and this is going to sound ridiculous. So if anybody out there can help me and knows what this book is, it was set in the Old West, some kind of traveling vaudeville show that had like either a robot or a Frankenstein monster that they were taking around, and it was a kid's book. But
Well,
I've never seen any reference to it, and nobody can tell me
For
what
me,
it was.
the other book that when I'm looking at like my sixth grade was Ender's Game. Did y'all read
Oh,
Ender's Game?
no.
That was the first time I was introduced to like sci-fi. I felt like Richard from Magnolia said Siddhartha by Herman Hesse should be on the list if it isn't. I think Frank mentioned Atlas Shrugged and Rand from Richard.
713-440-8870. Stephen from Cyprus is on the line. Stephen, what do you have to say?
Hi there. I just wanted to mention a book that kind of opened myself up to be more vulnerable as a child or as a teenager. It's called A Child Called It by David Peltzer. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
It's about child abuse. It's like a true story. It actually helped me open up about my experience with child abuse, and it helped me become more open to everyone. I was very recluse.
Yeah. It's interesting how a book with a storyline that can match issues things that you're dealing with in your own life, seeing them on the page and watching other characters experience them, how it helps us process our own situations. Is that how you found it?
Yes, sir. It was. I got into therapy, and one of the books I just happened upon it, and it kind of just shaped me and helped me want to help more people.
Well, I'm happy you found that book. I'm happy. And it just goes to show the power of the written word, the power of reading, how it can help people and why it is so important. We're sorry you went through what you did, but we are very happy that you are with us now to share that with us. Thank you for calling.
You know, they always say that reading takes you to places that you would never go.
Yeah.
And you think of that being like travel, but it also takes you to places in your own soul that you never thought you would go. And it really does make you question who you are and why you're here. It's you can't say enough good things about it.
Alex Garza comments over on YouTube, Friday Night Lights was required to read, I think only in Texas.
Francisco Leal likes The Outsiders, absolute classic. Yeah. Fritz Goldman recently, The Martian, which was turned into a pretty good movie too.
Yes, I watch a lot more film than I do read books. When it comes to reading a book, I prefer nonfiction or biographies. I've never really gotten a big fan.
Do you have a favorite biography? Winston Churchill,
well, Nicholas and
perhaps?
Alexandra.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God, that book.
What? I haven't heard of it.
It's about the last Tsar and Tsarina of Russia. And I read it over a year. And I say that because I took my time on it and I read, and each chapter I would then go and explore out. And this was back before you could just Google it on the internet. You know, you had the computers, but it wasn't like this access. So you pull up the Wikipedia page. So I'd go and find other books. And so on my big bookshelves at home, an entire shelf is all about Nicholas and Alexandra. All the different books I bought at used bookstores. And
is that your current obsession?
No, it was my obsession back in 19.
Don't forget, we do have our current obsessions coming up, and you can text us those at 713-440-8870.
Or if you just want to keep talking about books, we can do that too after our next interview.
After our next
here's some
interview.
good
That's
news.
true. We could just keep the convo of books going.
We'll just keep talking about books. Keep sending in your books, things you read in school, things that impacted you, things that you think should be on mandatory reading lists. Share all those with us either at online.
Things that should go away.
Or things that should go away. Talk at hellohouston.org or 713-440-8870. Call or text. What were you going to say, Frank?
Good news. My recycling got picked up yesterday.
Maybe it's one of those new trucks there.
Well, apparently the city council voted on Wednesday, Houston City Council, to approve $12.5 million for the purchase of 31 new trucks.
Well, they were listening to Hello Houston.
They were like, oh my, those three are worried about their trash.
That's right. And here there also says, love the Malcolm X biography. I have heard that is excellent.
Yeah.
So, yep. But coming up on Hello Houston, Dr. Robin Armstrong, who is the commissioner for Precinct 4 in Galveston County. He also serves on the Finance Commission of the Texas Republican National Committee. He'll give us the Republican view on redistricting. This is News 88.7.
With federal funding cuts, Houston Public Media has lost $2.2 million annually. In response, we have launched the Resiliency Fund, an urgent initiative to protect the programs and services you rely on. That includes PBS Kids, that provides free educational programming to children and families across Greater Houston. Your support of the Resiliency Fund helps keep this vital service accessible to our community. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
On the next Science Friday, guess what? You don't need to break a sweat to feel the psychological benefits of exercise.
So it's not the old, you have to do 20 minutes, you have to raise your heart rate to a certain level. We know from a lot of research that you can get by with much less.
How and why exercise can boost your mental health on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
You can hear that tomorrow starting at 1 o'clock.
Podcasting is a billion-dollar industry, but what are we actually getting out of all that listening?
We're delivering something that is, the emotional equivalent of QVC.
How podcasts lead us to isolate ourselves even further from one another, and why it's so difficult to have challenging conversations in person. That's next time on Think.
Think is on tonight at 10 o'clock.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Houston Public Library Foundation, opening doors to discovery this summer through educational programs, books, and digital tools for everyone. More at HoustonLibraryFoundation.org.
Support comes from GenPro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. Call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org to get your comment in on today's topics. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Texas Republicans have released a proposed map to redraw the state's congressional districts. The move has the potential to add 5 Republican-leaning seats for the GOP to pick up in the 2026 midterms. 4 of the GOP's pickup opportunities reside in majority Hispanic districts. The new map stands to append the midterms next year and give Republicans an opportunity to cling to their razor-thin House majority. The GOP's success depends on the party maintaining its gains among Hispanic voters, a demographic shift that helped President Trump reclaim the White House. The 30-day special session called by Republican Governor Greg Abbott is scheduled to end on August 19th, which gives state lawmakers a few weeks to finish the process. And joining us now is Dr. Robin Armstrong, the Commissioner for Precinct 4 in Galveston County. He also serves on the Finance Commission of the Texas Republican National Committee and joined us here on News 88.7 for our election specials last year. Welcome back. Welcome back, Dr. Robin Armstrong.
Hey, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Wanted to make sure you could hear me. And if you have any questions for Dr. Armstrong, you can give us a call at 713-440-8870.
Dr. Armstrong, I'd like to jump in with, we're getting a lot of concern about these maps. And one thing that we were sharing yesterday, I think it was, is the view or the point of view that in recent voting, the support of Democratic candidates was about 42% statewide. Yet in D.C., representation for Democratic-leaning individuals only about 21%. Should the maps be looking at things like that to justify what the voting was showing and then reflect that? Or how do we come to what we've come to as a map?
Well, I'll tell you, I think that the focus of this map is it certainly would be a politically gerrymandered map, and that is constitutional according to the Fifth Circuit decision that came down in August of 2024. And so I believe that what's happening is the Democrat Party has certainly racially gerrymandered and used the Voting Rights Act for many, many years to racially gerrymander districts. And so what happened was we had a court case in August of 2024 that actually said that coalition districts, for instance, were not constitutional any longer, not permissible. And so we didn't have to write those. And so I'll tell you, look at states like California, where they have 52 congressmen and they only have 9 Republicans. That's about 17% of their representation is Republican in a state where they get, 40+% of the vote. And so I think that it's not I guess you could say a fair process, but I think it is a political process, a political process that's been known. And I think that what's happening, that doesn't even count into effect all of the issues you get with the census and the population, and some states overcounting, some states undercounting, where they get more representation. And so I think that this is a situation now that allows Republican states to do political gerrymandering, which is permissible, and it disallows racial gerrymandering, which is what has happened in the state of Texas for the last few decades.
So, Dr. Armstrong, this is normally done at a different time in the decade. Why is this suddenly being done now?
Well, it's been done now because of the recent federal Fifth Circuit Court decision in August of 2024 that actually disallowed the drawing of coalition districts. And so that court case that was won in Galveston County. Ironically enough, the Biden Justice Department actually sued Galveston County because there was a district that was being there was a district that was being carved out in Galveston County, a precinct rather, on Commissioner's Court, and so they sued Galveston County. They won at the federal district court level, but they lost at the federal Fifth Circuit level, and that's when coalition districts were found to be not permissible any longer, according to the Voting Rights Act, according to the federal Fifth Circuit. And I think that is the impetus that allows or the legislature to go in and do redistricting at this time. There are 5 coalition districts in Texas that have been racially gerrymandered. Those are congressional districts. There are also state house seats, state house districts that have been gerrymandered, and state senate seats. And there's all the state commissioners precincts. In fact, Tarrant County up in North Texas actually just redistricted their county precincts as well. And so because they under the same reasoning and the same decision that was made by the Fifth Circuit.
I want to go back into the maps in just a little bit, and the current map that we're using that has had court challenges against it. But on a bigger issue, we hear a lot from the left about how this is unfair for voters in the state, this new map that's been presented. I'm curious from the right, where is the benefit and what are you folks seeing that says this is good for the voters in the state of Texas? Where is the benefits in this new map as you see them?
Well, I'll tell you, what I see is that, what we have seen in the state of Texas is when in our cities, for instance, you look at our cities and they're dominated by Democrat politicians, and I don't believe that those communities are well served. Certainly they chose them, but I still don't think they're well served by them. And so I think it would be helpful to have maps I think it would benefit the public to have a different perspective and a different alternative than just the same Democrat politicians that they have now. Having said that, that's my opinion, and certainly my opinion can be wrong. But I think at the end of the day, it's a constitutional issue. The Constitution has changed. I think if this case goes to the Supreme Court, they will uphold that decision. It'll be nationwide. Right now in the federal Fifth Circuit, they have said, political gerrymandering is okay, racial gerrymandering is not. And I think that's the basis for this decision. So honestly, I think it is helpful to the voters. But like I say, that's my opinion. You're going to have a lot of folks to disagree with that. But at the end of the day, it's not even necessarily what's fair. It's a gerrymandered district, politically gerrymandered, and I think racial gerrymandering does not serve anyone. And I think it just causes division, makes divisions worse. And so our goal is to show that listen, you can have an African American that represents an Anglo community. You can have Anglo American that represents an African American community, and those folks should be very active in those offices, making sure that they are hearing their concerns and serving them. I believe that this will ultimately promote more unity, less racial division. And that's what we want as a nation. I don't think you necessarily have to have the same race of a person representing, the same racial group. I think that's probably long-term unhealthy.
Okay, what were you going to say, Celeste?
I just had really one quick question, which is, Dr. Armstrong, would you have that same feeling of gerrymandering is okay and it's a part of our government if it were the opposite party doing the changing of the lines? Do you have that same sentiment when the Democratic Party does it?
Well, I'll tell you, I haven't heard anyone complain about California where that's clearly done. With the gerrymandered lines, no one's ever said a thing about that at all. I didn't even realize that they only had 9 Republicans out of 52 congressmen. That is a politically gerrymandered state. It's done in every left state in the country, and Texas generally has not done that at all. And like I say, it's not even to mention that they have so many more congressmen, because they've counted a lot of folks who are in the country illegally as well. And Texas has not done that. And so I think from a Democrat perspective, I think that they have certainly benefited from the racial politics, from the racial gerrymandering, and from counting people that states like Texas do not count.
You know, I do believe California does have a commission since 2011 that is a bipartisan commission that does their redistricting maps for them.
Well, and there is an elephant in the room, sir, that at least the story is that the president is strong-arming the governor to get these districts redrawn in order to secure a Republican majority in the House at midterms. Now, is that... And I understand it's your opinion, but do you agree with that that's what's happening, or do you not have any way of knowing?
Well, I mean, I think that I'll tell you, so I can't speak for President Trump and the governor, but I certainly can say that if I were president of the United States, I probably would be strong arming, Governor X to get more seats for the midterm as well. Yeah. I mean, that is a political process. And so that's, frankly, what I would do. I think maybe if President Trump is not doing that, I would say he's probably not, not fighting politically like he should. I believe that Democrats have been fighting these political battles for many, many years. And certainly California has they have a commission, but we know that nothing is bipartisan anymore. That's unfortunate. I hate that, but it's just not the case. And we know that those Republicans on that commission are supporting the lines. That's why you have 43 Democrats and only 9 Republicans in California. It's not because there's that many Democrats. I think it's because there's those lines are gerrymandered, just like most left states are.
We're talking with Dr. Armstrong, who's Commissioner of Precinct 4 in Galveston County, also serves on the Finance Commission for the Texas Republican National Committee. Our phone lines are open for your calls about the redistricting map at 713-440-8870. A couple things that you bring up, and then we've got a call I want to grab. But I'm curious, when you talk about California, and they're in the news with all of this going on because the governor there is saying, well, if Texas does this here, then California is going to redo theirs. And then New York says they may redo theirs. This could start a kind of a ripple effect that could basically, as you've been talking about, move it from being a just representation to a purely political game that we play. And doing it outside of the years of the census, like it is traditionally done, it could happen anytime, all the time. Where are we headed with this, do you fear?
Well, I'll tell you, I think that California really does not have any legal justification. Well, you could actually redistrict any time. You've always been able to redistrict at any time. And so they certainly can do it. They don't have any legal justification. Texas actually does. I mean, we just had a federal Fifth Circuit decision that came out, like I say, in August of 2024, that allows us to do this because there's been a change in the law. And so that allows us to do it. And then also, I'll tell you, I think, California, I think these states have been doing this for a very long time. And I don't know that California I don't know that it's even possible for them to get any more Democrat seats. Yeah. I mean, it's 43-9 already. I don't know that it's possible. They might have to, I don't know what they'd have to do to do that.
They seem to think they can.
I know that they certainly have some constitutional requirements as well. Yeah. So I think they need like a constitutional amendment to change that situation for them.
713. Let me jump in. 713-440-8870. Sure. Let's try and grab some calls because they're backing up for us. Let's first go to Kevin from the north side. Kevin, what's on your mind?
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. I just had, I guess, a question. When you look at, I guess, can someone answer the question of why was the pre-clearance needed for the state of Texas anyway? From my understanding, it was because of the way that Texas has always drawn their maps racially, so that they had to come out with a section in the Voting Rights Act to help with the pre-clearance because of those racist southern states that were gerrymandering black and brown votes out from the beginning. That's the history of it, from my understanding. So when I hear a person say that the representation in my district, in District 18, was not doing what we needed them to do. That's our responsibility as a voter to make that decision, not someone to tell me that no, I don't like the way they're governing you, and so I'm going to make sure that I move these maps to give you a Republican that can govern you or help you in this matter. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. If I voted for this person and I'm happy with this person, why are you trying to tell me who's best for me?
Kevin, thank you for your comment. Yeah, hold on, because let's get Dr. Armstrong's reaction.
Yeah, well, he's absolutely right. I mean, I agree with him wholeheartedly. He does have the right to choose, and so I'm not disagreeing with that. And I told him that I mentioned that was just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So my opinion isn't worth much. So that's all that was. But what I would say is that I say pre-clearance is no more. I mean, that is not the case anymore. So Texas does not have to go through pre-clearance any longer, and certainly there was a justification for going through pre-clearance with the Justice Department because there is a history of racism, and that history is there. And certainly, Lord, the last thing I want to do is disenfranchise African American or Hispanic voters. I don't think that this does this. I think that this is a political gerrymandering operation, and I think that that's perfectly constitutional. And so I certainly want. I want everybody to have good representation. The gentleman's absolutely correct. He should be able to choose. I'm not saying I want to choose who his representatives are, but all I'm saying is that, for instance, the 18th congressional district. I don't know if you've looked at that on the current map. It's shaped like a C. It's not a contiguous map. It has these fingers pointing out of it. It's the strangest drawn map probably in the state of Texas. It looks crazy. There's not, and I think these maps are more contiguous. The districts are at least more square than they ever have been. And CD18 is absolutely a racially gerrymandered district because of the way it's shaped. It's a crazy shape.
Well,
and if you look at it on the current map.
For point of
so
reference
I think
on
that's something that needs to be corrected as well.
For point of reference on that, though, these maps were drawn by the Republicans because they were in power when that map was drawn, and they have been in court saying that they were not racially gerrymandered, and they have been saying that these are just and fair maps. And yet now they're currently in court saying that these are just and fair maps while at the same time introducing a brand new map, if I understand the process correctly. Let's grab another call, 713-440-8870. It's David from Garden Oaks. David, what's on your mind?
Sorry. I'm just questioning the governor's priorities in redistricting, considering he still has not either appointed or called for an election for my congressman, because I still don't have a congressman.
Are you in District 18?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. David.
So, upon the death of Sylvester Turner.
Right. Yeah. David, thank you for your comments. Dr. Anderson, anything?
Oh, no. I mean, I can't comment on that at all. I just, I don't know what to say. That's the governor's prerogative to call the special, and I don't have influence there.
Okay, moving on to Chris from Cyprus. Chris, what's on your mind?
He just said exactly the point I was going to make. If it's about representation, Sylvester Turner's seat would have been filled a long time ago. Also, them just changing up the lines midstream instead of doing it every 10 years to just kind of like suit their needs. But, someone in Washington dictating policy here in Texas, I just want to focus on Texas here. And I think maybe, having the representatives come and, face-to-face speak with their constituents and actually have a couple of town hall meetings, some of this can be, taken under consideration. But when you have one party that just won't even have town hall meetings and you're going to represent me, where do I get my say-so? But, thank y'all for having this discussion, and I'll continue to listen.
Thank you very much. Dr. Armstrong, anything on that, Ray, on that comment?
I'll tell you, and if a Republican, is elected in one of these districts that were previously held by a Democrat, I think it is important for the people of that district to demand that their congressman represents them, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. I think it's important that they show up at their district offices. I think it's every congressman has a district office and a district director, it's important for them to show up there and to make sure and that they demand that they're represented, because look, these congressmen are servants of the people, and that's what they're there for. And they're supposed to serve all of their constituents. And so I would just encourage that gentleman just to show up and demand that they represent them and they represent their values. You might be surprised at what you see if you do that.
I'm curious really quickly, too, your understanding of who drew these maps and how they came to be, or this map, and how it came to be the map that's being pushed right now.
Well, I mean, I don't have any sort of inside base, certainly on the, I don't know who drew this map. I mean, I certainly don't know who drew it. You know, I certainly have some ideas, but I don't know exactly who drew it.
But you trust them.
Not privy to that.
You trust that you trust. You don't know who drew them, but I guess you trust that they drew it correctly.
Well, I look at the map. I mean, I've seen the map like everyone has, and so if it was a, you know, they floated a map early on in this process. I thought that was a horrible map, and so we were ready to certainly come guns a-blazing if that first map that was presented was the map. This one actually looks a lot better.
We have a whole bunch of calls still on.
We would not just accept it. Certainly, we look at the map and determine if it's something that looks reasonable.
We have a whole bunch of calls still online, and time is ticking away, so we'll try and get through a few more of these quickly. Teresa from Northwest Houston, what's on your mind?
Yes, there have been several callers that I've heard since I called in saying pretty much what I was thinking. I noticed from the expert there that the term racial gerrymandering was being thrown around with the assumption that the listening audience really didn't know the history of it or understand what it was. And racial gerrymandering, of course, historically was done to divide up areas where racial minorities had strength and deny them of any representation in Congress. And racial gerrymandering has not been done to actually, except by the Democrats, to actually extend representation to minorities. So, now we know that. I'm also from District 18, and Governor Abbott's unilateral decision has been to deny me any representation since, February, March? So we've been most of the year without representation, and that doesn't seem to bother him. We are a Democratic district. And when it comes to that strange C-shaped district that concerns your expert there, if you look at districts all over the state, one in Austin, Austin is divided up into 6 congressional districts, and there's a Democrat elected in only one of them. And they do that by taking a little piece of Austin and extending it as far eastward as Cypress. So, to pick that one district where Democrats actually get elected from a strangely shaped district is a little bit hypocritical.
Teresa, thank you for your comments. 713-440-8870. Let's grab Renee from Galveston. Renee, what's on your mind?
Hi. I wanted to hear the commissioner answer the question that Celeste asked if it was his opinion, because he did not answer the question he just expounded. I want to know if he would agree that this would be the same if it were in reverse. I live in Galveston County, and when I go to the polls to vote, there aren't any options other than Republicans, and I don't feel like those politicians are serving me well.
Renee, we are tight on time, so I'm going to end it there. And Dr. Armstrong, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to answer.
If I were in the Democrats' shoes right now, I'd be doing exactly what they're doing, probably. I'd be upset about it. I'd be angry about it. I would be, doing the same thing. So to answer her question directly, I understand that feeling. I get that feeling. And I would have her, she can come to my office, and I certainly will talk to her about the issues that I'm a county commissioner in Galveston County. I certainly will hear her opinions and hear her thoughts if she feels like she's not represented. Commissioner Giusti is down in Galveston. He represents Galveston Island. I'm sure he would love to talk to you as well. So we want to represent her for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here today.
Dr. Robin Armstrong is the commissioner for Precinct 4 in Galveston County. Again, Dr. Armstrong, thank you so much for joining us on Hello Houston.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for listening, engaging, chatting with us today on Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations, and we'll also be speaking with Houston City Council member Tiffany Thomas. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media.
Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details at 730-2525 or at johnmooreservices.com.